From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
And good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington, the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's delegation and other leaders about the federal matters that matter to you. Today's topic, elder abuse. We're going to look at this heartbreaking, growing crime against the most vulnerable members of our society and what needs to be done in the Hill and on the state to stop it. We're also going to tell you how you might be able to identify a person in need of help today. My guests today are Dr. Sheila Jones of the Adult Protective Services Division of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Robert Blancato, the National Coordinator of the Washington, D.C.-based Elder Justice Coalition, and William Benson, the National Policy Advisor of the Washington, D.C.-based Adult Protective Services Association. Thanks so much, all of you, for being here today. Appreciate it. Well, last year, nearly 1,300 allegations of elder abuse in Nevada were reported to authorities. And since that number refers only to reported cases, the true number is expected to be much higher. Well, today on Eye on Washington, we're going to learn what elder abuse is and what makes older adults vulnerable to abuse. We'll learn the signs of elder abuse and where you or a loved one can turn for help. And we'll learn what's being done and should be being done legislatively to turn elder abuse statistics around. More than 500,000 reports of abuse against elderly Americans are filed every single year, and millions more cases go unreported. And if you think that isn't a big deal, consider this. The National Council on Aging says that elders who have been abused have a 300% higher risk of death when compared with those who have not been mistreated. And while physical abuse is the most serious form, elder financial abuse and fraud cost older Americans at least $36.5 billion, that's billion with a B, per year. In some great news, according to Wallet Hub, Nevada ranks second in the nation, trailing only the District of Columbia for best elder abuse protection. And we'll look at the state's efforts here in our legislative segment. But for now, we want to talk about the overall problem. So right now, and we want to get some help out for those suffering today, of course. So first, welcome to the show, all of you. I want to start with this. What is elder abuse? Why is it so much more in the spotlight today than in years past? And I'll start with you, Dr. Jones.
First of all, elder abuse is when an individual is either abused, physically or sexually abused, neglected, that can be medical neglect, criminal neglect, or financially exploited, as well as self-neglecting. So, for an example, for self-neglecting, a person who hoards, a person who is medication non-compliant. Those are sort of examples of self-neglect.
Okay. Let me talk first about the physical side of all this. Mr. Blancato, I'll start with you. You know, that is the most concerning because it can cost someone a life, not just their life savings.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And what you find in all cases of elder abuse is that it's about an older person who gives their trust to someone, and that some person violates that trust and does the horrible things that are called elder abuse. The physical, obviously, is the one that started all the work in Washington dealing with elder abuse. But as Dr. pointed out, there's many other forms of elder abuse, but we should be, cognizant of all of them and trying to combat all of them.
Again, as far as the physical side, Mr. Benson, where is this occurring? We hear the horror stories of the nursing homes on the newscasts and et cetera, but is it widespread? Where else is this going on?
Abuse in the nursing home has always gotten attention, but the fact of the matter is the vast majority of abuse across the board, and certainly physical abuse, takes place within the home and within the family. The preponderance of abusers are related to or known to, in one way or another, the victim. So even though nursing home abuse gets a lot of attention, it's only a sliver of the actual problem.
Dr. Jones, has elder abuse gotten a lot worse in recent years, or are we just hearing a lot more about it? It seems to me, when I'm researching this more and more, I'm finding that the problem is escalating.
It is escalating, but I also may add that it is becoming more complex of an issue. The cases are becoming more complex. A lot of the cases not only may present with neglect, but also with abuse. And as it has been mentioned by my colleagues, it oftentimes is occurring within a family member or even a caregiver, home health aide or chore aide.
And is it true that the elderly, regardless of the type of abuse, unless it's self-abuse, as you mentioned, but whether it's physical, financial, fraud, etc., is it true that they are a part of our population that's less likely to report when they've been abused? Maybe because they're more reliant on that caregiver, so they're afraid to come forward?
Great numbers of them are isolated. They're either isolated by the circumstances in which they live, or those who are around them are isolating them. So it's very difficult if you are an abused older person in many circumstances to pick up a phone or get a connection to somebody to be able to report it. So the isolation alone does it. I did want to make one comment about the increasing numbers of complaints. A lot of that is driven by just sheer demographics. As we're seeing a virtual doubling of the older population by the year 2025 or 2030, just even if prevalence rates don't go up at all, the numbers will literally double as a result of that.
And I would add one more thing. The average victim of elder abuse is an older woman living alone between 75 and 80. And according to the Census Bureau, about 48% of women over 75 now live alone in this country. So you have a demographic reality right in front of you on this.
Okay.
One more addition.
Yes.
Outreach. There's nationwide, the country is putting in a lot of energy and a bit of funding around outreach to get the number of reports to increase.
And we're going to pick up, I want to know more about the treatment and everything that's being done when we come back. But first, when we return, signs and symptoms, we're going to have some tips that your loved ones might be the victim of elder abuse. All that for you just after this.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, brought to you by Caesars Entertainment, the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, NV Energy, Jim Marsh Automotive, the Rogich Communications Group, and Renown Health.
I have 3 tests next week. I'm going to be studying all weekend. Ugh. Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. What time? I work until 6. Okay, sounds good. Just text me after. Okay. No!
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent.
We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness. I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of the horror of elder abuse across Nevada and nationally and what needs to be done to stop it. My special guests today are Dr. Sheila Jones of the Adult Protection Services Division of the Washington, D.C. Department of Human Services, Mr. Robert Blancato, the National Coordinator of the Washington, D.C.-based Elder Justice Coalition, and William Benson, the National Policy Advisor of the Washington, D.C.-based Adult Protective Services Association. Now, while we focus here on Eye on Washington on federal news, and we'll get to the legislative side of that issue, I want to spend this segment on the most important thing, helping you determine if a loved one is a victim of elder abuse. According to the National Council on Aging, here are some of the warning signs. Physical: bruises, pressure marks, broken bones, abrasions, and burns. Emotional abuse signs: withdrawal from normal activities, a change in alertness, unusual depression, and strained or tense relationships. Financial abuse generally manifests as sudden changes in finances. There's also the abuse of neglect. You can look for bed sores, unattended medical needs, poor hygiene, and unusual weight loss. Mr. Blancato, what else should people watching or listening to this show statewide today, what should they look for when they suspect something might be up?
Well, they should, particularly in the financial area, they should be looking at unusual transactions involving banking. They should certainly be on the lookout for scams and be cognizant of what a scam is and advise their older relative not to give away a single piece of information of any kind, because that's where the problem always begins. You know, the person living alone gets a phone call, one communication for the whole day, and on the other end of the phone is a scammer who tells them that they won the Jamaican lottery and to send them $300 for processing fee and they'll get their big check next week. These things have to be communicated, not to open that mail, not to answer that phone, not to give away any part of your information.
You know, and on that, Mr. Benson, on that financial note, with the growth in the internet, et cetera, you know, our older relatives really are being scammed and bilked out of their savings. It's only worsened with the growing ease of reaching them through email and text. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And we know that older people, I think, are the fastest cohort that's going online. There's a lot of mythology about older people not using the technology, and that's simply not true. And they go online. They use it typically to communicate with friends and family through email, and that's where they're getting scammed most frequently. So tremendous dangers associated with the internet and vulnerability of older people.
Dr. Jones, back to the physical end of this. Are there some more things that are more directly observable? For instance, maybe you overhear a caretaker making verbal threats or belittling or being controlling, et cetera. What are some of the other physical things we can look for?
Unfortunately, cognitive impairment is a very critical element now. Wherever it's early stages of dementia, it could be Alzheimer's. Oftentimes, these individuals are absolute targets, especially for financial exploitation. But also we see it a lot with self-neglect, where they have forgotten how to bathe, how to prepare their meals, or if they are preparing meals, leaving the stoves on, causing fires. And that can be, of course, a very serious safety issue, environmental issue, especially those who are living in apartments and condominiums.
You know, whether it's physical, financial, or any other type of abuse, how do you help that older person to open up? What do you three suggest?
First, establishing rapport. That's a key, because older adults are not very trusting if they don't know you. So it takes time to establish rapport with them, and also in that process, trying to gain not only the rapport, but also what services can you provide to assist them, to move them from where they are. You may offer services such as adult daycare programs, where they can play bingo, go on trips with seniors of their own age, have lunching programs. Wellness centers. The district has a number of wellness centers, as other states around the country. Wellness centers are a great place to go to congregate, have congregate meals, and just to interact with other older adults.
And I think the faith-based community has a lot to do with this as well, because the older person trusts the people in their church and their minister and so on, and they need to be more engaged and be more on the context of detecting unusual activity even among their parishioners.
Mr. Benson, you know, we also mentioned, you know, physical and financial. Okay, that's pretty easy to define. Tell us more about neglect, what it is and why it, too, is such a cruel crime against these people.
Well, neglect means essentially that you have some responsibility to that older person. You've taken on a responsibility to provide care for them, whether you're a paid caregiver or an informal family caregiver, and failure to provide for that person to meet their care needs if they're a vulnerable person is insistent insidious. If you fail to groom someone, you fail to bathe them, you fail to change, if they're incontinent, to change their garments, that then leads to, not just filth, but it leads to serious injury, decubitus ulcers or bed sores, leads to sepsis, leads to death. So neglect itself, failure to provide food.
Again, how do you get that person to come forward?
Well, it's going to be very difficult. I think one of the most in the home setting where a preponderance of abuse does take place, particularly of that kind, whether it's by a paid caregiver who comes into the home or a family member, it's really important to have as many eyes as possible that may be available to check in on that person. Bob mentioned the faith-based community. Medical providers absolutely are essential.
Keep your eyes
Mailmen,
open.
Anybody who might be able to see and get access to that person.
Okay, thanks. We're going to follow up that and more when we return. Elder abuse, neglect, exploitation, and isolation laws. What's already on the books, what needs to be added in Nevada and nationally, and that's next.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
When you think RTC, what comes to mind? How about jobs? RTC road projects bring thousands of jobs to Washoe County, expanding and connecting northern Nevada, growing our local economy, providing a more secure future for our residents and their families. So when you think jobs, think RTC. Your RTC, the RTC of Washoe County.
We're not a miracle drug. We're not a technology. We're not doctors. Just the hope, which can often be the best cure of all. The Ronald McDonald House, a home away from home for seriously ill children and their families.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
I make learning a privilege, not a chore, and unconventional methods common. I'm a teacher. I make more.
Safety. We all think about it. You think about it when he buckles in, when you check your mirrors and put away your phone. RTC thinks about safety too. In fact, we create it. Center turn lanes mean fewer blind spots. Bike lanes keep cyclists and you safe. Roundabouts reduce injury collisions. And all these crosswalks are designed to keep families like yours safe. Safety is your priority, and it's ours too. Every day, in everything we do.
Welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of elder abuse and how to both recognize the crime and help its victims. My guests today are Dr. Sheila Jones of the Adult Protection Services Division of the Washington, D.C. Department of Human Services, Robert Blancato, the National Coordinator of the Washington, D.C.-based Elder Justice Coalition, and William Benson, the National Policy Advisor of the Washington, D.C.-based Adult Protective Services Association. Well, I mentioned earlier in our program that Nevada is second only to Washington, D.C. for laws protecting elders from abuse and neglect. It is a crime in Nevada to abuse, neglect, financially exploit, abandon, or isolate the elderly. And while it's illegal to harm people of any age, challenge, Nevada law carries harsher penalty for targeting older persons, older being defined as 60 or older. A first-time conviction of elder abuse, neglect, or isolation is a gross misdemeanor in Nevada as long as there's no substantial bodily harm or substantial mental harm. Punishment is up to 364 days in jail and or $2,000 in fines or victim restitution, but subsequent cases or those involving substantial injury are a Class B felony in the state. Penalties include several years in prison and thousands in fines depending on the case. Significantly on the federal side, the Elder Justice Act, which is the first comprehensive federal legislation to address elder abuse, was signed into law by President Obama in March of 2010 as part of the Health Care Reform Act. So, you know, in case my audience didn't know how hard we work to get you the top authorities in the issues, I do want to know that it just so happens that Mr. Blancato and Mr. Benson co-hosted a webcast in October of 2010. What is the Elder Justice Act? Because I know you guys have talked about that.
The Elder Justice Act is the most comprehensive landmark law passed to fight elder abuse. What it does basically is to say the federal commitment is lacking. It would provide dedicated funding for adult protective services. It would increase training opportunities for ombudsmen in nursing homes. It would set up forensic centers so we can do a better job of detecting elder abuse. It was a long struggle, took 7 years to pass, which we still can't believe it took that long for something as important as that to get done. But it is done, and now we're all working on implementation to see it gets done right.
Mr. Benson, is it funded?
It is poorly funded. We have had just a drop.
But funding has been appropriated by Congress?
A very small amount. $10 million is the high water mark
what were you
so
hoping
far.
For?
Originally about $350 million, which was authorized at least that amount. So it's what has actually been provided in dollars is a drop in the bucket. And so far, not one penny has been provided to support directly adult protective services anywhere in the country.
What are you guys doing to kind of shake things up over there? I'll give it to you. What else is happening on the Hill regarding elder abuse and to get some more resources, to get some more funding toward this?
Well, we are trying. We're trying to advocate as much as we can, but we're in the light of advocacy, knowing that we still have this large population to serve, many of whom are marginalized. We're still looking at other sources of funding. So maybe VOCA funding, which is another stream of funding for us. We've had some recent funding through the Elder Justice Initiative, but having to look at other outside sources to diversify our funding portfolio.
I'll add the Social Services Block Grant is the one piece of federal law that provides funding that states can use for adult protective services. Nevada uses it to the tune of about $2 million per year, and that money is very imperiled. And so we need advocates to stay on top of that and make sure Congress continues to support and fund the Social Services Block Grant.
So as we're closing, we're about out of time for this segment, but I was going to ask you all what, in your opinion, needs to happen on the Hill to solve this elder abuse problem in Nevada and the nation, and I guess it's more just a spotlight on it and more taking the funding needs seriously. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The funding is the most important piece at this point because you can't stop without funding.
Thank you. And when we return, resources for victims and those wanting to help them. Help is ahead. We're going to have details after this.
Planet Hollywood, Paris, Harrah's, Caesar's Palace. It's one of the most exciting skylines in the world, Las Vegas. Caesars Entertainment has nearly 50 casinos worldwide, including these. But no matter which casino you visit, we want you to play responsibly. And if you need help setting or keeping a limit, we hope you'll call this number. You see, we know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
I got my own iPod Touch and use my dad's login to get on gambling sites. Poker is the best. but I'm losing a lot. Since I'm too young to play, they're not allowed to keep the money, and my dad won't find out. That's right, isn't it?
Are you studying tonight? We can meet up and study together.
Text me after.
Okay.
There is no text, tweet, or call that's worth a life.
One pedestrian death is one too many.
Look up.
And look out for each other.
This girl is very pretty. It's inciting feelings of jealousy in me. We should pick on her.
I'm insecure about some things, so I think we should put some me stuff on here. Maybe even some lies, too.
Yeah.
I just want to be accepted by you both. So I'm going to send this to my friends so they think I'm cool.
Kids bully for all kinds of reasons. None of them are good. Find ways to get involved at flipthescriptnow.org.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
And we're back with our closing segment, and today our most important segment of Eye on Washington. We've had as our special guest today Dr. Sheila Jones of the Adult Protective Services Division of the Washington, D.C. Department of Human Services, Mr. Robert Blancato, the National Coordinator of the Washington, D.C.-based Elder Justice Coalition, and William Benson, the National Policy Advisor of the Washington-based Adult Protective Services Association. If you or someone you love is the victim of the horrid crime of elder abuse, the information we've provided today is important, but it's not as important as getting help immediately. If you're in immediate danger, of course, call 911 or the local police. You can also report elder abuse or neglect to the Nevada Adult Protective Services and Elder Abuse Hotline at 888-729-0571. That is 888-729-0571. There are many online resources. You can research elder abuse online, but to access my guest website for help, National Adult Protective Services Association, that's NAPSA-now.com, and the Department of Human Services Adult Protection Services Division, go to dhs.dc.gov and click Adult Protective Services. You guys have been wonderful guests. I hope we can help people today, and I hope we provided some important and good information, but mostly the point is reach out, get help, or help someone when you suspect something.
Immediately.
Agreed. Absolutely.
Thank you for doing the show.
Well, I hope it helps people. And again, if you are in danger of being abused, call 911 or your local police right away, and then pick up the phone, call Nevada Adult Protective Services and the Elder Abuse Hotline, 888-729-0571. Please reach out today. That does wrap up this week's Eye on Washington. For more information about any federal issue that impacts you in Nevada, you can visit our website. It's joycecommunications.com. You can like us on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, catch any shows you may have missed on our YouTube page. Thanks so much for joining us on this important edition of Eye on Washington. I'm Marilee Joyce in Washington, D.C. Have a great day.
You've been watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Would your company like to join our family of sponsors? Please visit joycecommunications.com/sponsor to learn more about becoming a sponsor today.